Once again, hello guys, and today my group will be talking about policies within the work environment and a company environment. This topic was had way more depth than we thought to it. There was way more categories involved in policies, multiple different types of policies that a company would uphold to make sure their workforce is operating in good condition. Just a few examples, I'm not going to say the names, but these are just a few of the categories that we decide to do it on. There's multiple policies you see it between from phone to email, health and safety. There's sexual harassment, regular harassment, recruitment, code of conduct, and then you have drug and alcohol policies as well. So, I will be starting out with the drug policies, drug and alcohol policies. There are many uses of drugs in the workplace and everything. None of them have any good outcomes whatsoever, so companies will try their very hardest to make sure their employees are not indulged in that activity. One of the many steps they will take, or I should say the first and most basic one, is that with every single new hire, they will typically hand out a drug-free workplace policy handbook. It'll tell them the full disclosure, everything. Most of them have zero tolerance. They don't care what you do at your home most of the time, revolving around alcohol, but they do want you clean and all that stuff, just to make sure you can function to your full capabilities. So here we have an example from The Office. That's Michael Scott, right? He plays the boss on that show. So this is the second step normally they'll take. It's a visit with your boss or your recruitment or your hiring manager. They will go over everything, their drug policy with you, just in case you don't want to read through the thick booklet. Now this is typically what you'll see if you're under suspicion, or you'll do it before you're actually hired. This is the regular drug test that you'll see. It tests for many things. Some things you wouldn't expect actually, some things you probably would. And it's just necessary to point because they're also very expensive. So company, if they don't test you before, they probably won't ever because it is an expensive process. These are typically the 12 drugs that they will look for. It's called the 12-panel drug test. As you can see, there's marijuana, cocaine, amphetamines, heroin, a bunch of other stuff I honestly don't even know. But the point is, they will search for it. If you do any drugs or take part in any of that, they will most likely certainly find it. Typical way they'll do it is through a urine sample. There are many other ways, but the urine sample, you can do the 12-step process through doing that. It'll look for all the types of drugs and everything, and the way it normally works out is that they will go into the middle of the room, unexpected, it's at their discretion to announce the drug test or not in most cases, and then they will go to the bathroom, fill up a cup, and then they'll see what comes up. There are other options they will do, such as hair tests and everything. There's a bunch of, according to drug users, there's multiple different ways you can avoid it, but it's so accurate to a point where you could bleach your hair. They sell hair treatment products for it all the time. And the point is, you will get caught doing it because the test is super accurate. It's expensive for a reason, like I said before. However, at this point you might be wondering, there are special cases, right? Like medicinal marijuana. The point is, they still have the full discrepancy not to hire you if you show up in a drug test that you have marijuana, even with prescription. In most states, most of the time, a company won't hold you accountable for it because it knows medical purposes. Just a clear example, I just want you to see all those states where it says operational, not yet operational. Green and yellow typically, those are the states that are allowed. That's more than half America at this point, so I just feel the need to bring this up as it is an important topic and how it's growing more and more within the industry. And the policies typically should be revised at this point. Perfect example is California. Medicinal marijuana is there and recreational is just getting set up there right now. A company, they will drug test you before if they decide to, and if you're a medicinal marijuana patient and it turns up in urine, believe it or not, most of the time, they do have discrepancy and the power just to refuse you for that. Not that that's necessarily a negative thing, it's just showing you how companies will uphold the policy most of the time.
It's not a negative thing, you're fired.
This is Workaholics, we all know this reference, of course. One example, they did an episode on it. They went to a recreational usage state where they were legally allowed through all their power to use it. However, they were afraid of it coming up in a drug test and everything. The company still holds the power and the right to hold you accountable even though everything you did was legally, because they don't want that kind of activity in the workplace. Here we see alcohol in the workplace. Alcohol is usually the most common type of drug, and yes, it is defined as a drug in the national index. And so most of the time they don't want it because it makes you sluggish and everything. But there's multiple other cases with alcohol in the workplace. Most of the time, they will not want it on your property or their property whatsoever, because it's known to make you sluggish, of course. Like, we've all had alcohol at this point, I think it's safe to say, and everything. They also do not want any transactions, buying, get-togethers. They don't want any alcohol involved in the workplace whatsoever. If not, it's complete at discrepancy to fire you once again. This was a personal anecdote. One of my best friends from home, his father owns a bakery. Employee got off work. They were allowed to drink. However, he got too drunk, threw up all over the sink and the food they made for the day after. He was fired, terminated instantly because they still had the discrepancy to do it. So that's just a perfect example. Like I said, he did wind up being fired, and under all these causes, it's not that hard to get fired if you don't want to. Because the thing is with that, is that like, it's a 50-50 chance, and however, it could escalate into something worse even if you are fired. It's not the worst situation. Because according to the Drug National Bureau of, what was it? It was Minnesota, excuse me. And Minnesota has the most relatable policies between states and how they operate within other companies. There's a 50% chance that the company will hold you accountable and report you to the authorities such as police. It's just the statistics. I just feel the need to state. Also, if you get caught violating any drug policies, it will go on your permanent record, your references. Of course, if you mention them, they will bring it up. You could have a stellar resume like that, and they'll just completely throw it away. They won't hold it serious just because you had a previous offense of violating a drug and alcohol policy within your previous workplace. So now I'm going to switch it up to my friend Brett. He's going to talk to you about code of conduct. Thank you for listening, and let's give him a big hand.
Yay, Brett. Brett, is that on pause?
It's not on pause, right?
No, it's gonna keep going.
Yeah, it'll keep going.
Okay, can you stop it?
Sure.
Just hit escape.
Escape?
Yeah. All right. What I wanted to say was, as we get into these, it wasn't Nick that I was harassing, but sometimes you will have things go wrong. I've unplugged projectors and been a harasser and interjected and tried to trip people up. You're in the arena, and I just know that was the first time I had kind of laughed, and I said, I didn't warn anybody that I was going to do that, and you handled it beautifully.
Thank you.
So, I didn't like, though, how I did it, so I'm going to back off, and you guys don't have to worry about me jumping in. So, if you know how to fix that back to where it's supposed to be, go right ahead.
Is it time to just go?
Should just play.
Yeah,
Alright. What's going on, guys? I'm Brent. I had a code of conduct. And what code of conduct, often called code of ethics, it kind of depends on the company, is basically a guideline for all employees to follow. That way they know what policies to look at, what to do in certain situations, or how to deal with other employees, because otherwise it'd just kind of be chaos. They wouldn't know what the company is expecting from them, and it just gives an overall guideline which can really help all the employees. Is it only 20?
Maybe not.
I don't think it is.
Oh, what does it start from the beginning?
You have to hit up play from the slide.
Hit escape.
That's what I did.
Yeah, it's hit go top.
You can just hit arrow down too. and that'll-
Play from current slider, right?
Okay, yeah.
Should
I think don't hit the arrow.
don't
it's
just
not-
let it go to the corner.
Alright, that's not a good one. Alright, in the meantime, I'll just start on the second slide that's going to come up, and that's basically going over the all the values that are implemented in a code of conduct. This is a good example of some of them: ethics, integrity, respect, honesty. This way, employees know what that company is expecting from them, how they should follow all their core values that usually managers or corporate executives implement. And this really helps all the employees because that way they know basically how to treat all the other employees. Without a code of conduct, employees tend to break a lot of rules. So this way, it shows them how if they can follow all the rules and won't have to worry whether they're breaking something, because they can always refer to the code of conduct or code of ethics for it. Also, if an employee does or continues to break a lot of policies, it gives employers a good excuse to fire them. With certain companies, it can be difficult to fire employees unless you have a good reason, but violating the code of conduct often can do this. And then this is a picture of just a small business. It's often very important in small businesses because they have such broad roles, and there's so few people, and it's so interpersonal that a code of conduct is very important. I mean, large corporations as well, but just because small companies have so few people, it's very important for everyone to kind of know what they're doing. We'll get more into this with these guys later, but some things it usually covers is drug and alcohol use, which was just covered. And then also things like sexual harassment. Those are some of the things that will be included and usually big in code of conduct, just so the company is legally covered for it. Also the dress code. This is kind of depends on what your job is. If it's an office setting, it could be business formal, shirt, tie, suit jacket, business casual, which can just be kind of what I'm wearing, khakis and a polo. Or if it's kind of a not as high up job, it'll just be very casual clothing, kind of everyday clothing. Usually HR is in charge of implementing all these rules and regulations or creating the code of conduct. This is because obviously being an HR class, it deals with all the employees and just the company as a whole, so that's usually the department that will take care of all this. And then this is just some things that may also be included. One of the big things is the team, because it focuses on the employees most of the time and basically how they're going to function, what they're going to do. But it can also include other things other than just the employees themselves. It can focus on the customer because that's how they make their profit. That's how they're going to make all their revenue. It also focuses on how to make the right or wrong decision. So if employees are ever kind of confused on what to do in certain situations, they can always refer to the handbook and see what it's going to call for them to do. And it also depends on their departments. This thing shows all the different kind of things within a company or different industries, and each industry kind of has a different code of conduct that it appeals to, just because they're so different and have different everyday duties. Also schools, I'm sure you've noticed code of conducts usually at the beginning of the year. High school, you probably had to sign something and hand it in, and that's basically just says, if you remember it, will go over cheating, bullying, harassment, all those kinds of things, so that way students know what to expect of the school, and companies will, or teachers will as well. Another good example of code of conduct is the military. Obviously theirs is much more strict than, say, most companies. That's because they expect a lot of discipline, great ethics, and just overall great performance. So they can get kicked out very easy, but it kind of shows how important it is. It also goes over all the business strategies, or all things that go with business, such as systems, structure, style, just the overall culture of any industry, corporation, or business. It'll touch on different topics in that with different behaviors. And another thing it does, which is really important, is it prevents corruption. The companies are a lot of times, especially big corporations, prone to corruption because there's so much money being pushed, there's so much stakeholders. Code of ethics for a lot of major corporations will cover this and make sure that all the kind of corporate executives are playing by the rules. And in the long run, that can save them a ton of money, because companies that do get caught with corruption or scandals usually get, at least big companies, millions and millions of dollars in fines, and which can really hurt the bottom line. It can hurt their stock, it can hurt their stakeholders, and it can really hurt everyone involved in the company. And just to show you some examples is Wells Fargo more recently in the news for their scandal with opening more bank accounts than they did. And I'm sure you guys have heard about WorldCom, Enron. Those are just great examples of how kind of the company got out of sight of what they should do, made the wrong decision, and they went bankrupt. A lot of industries will have their own code of ethics, and this is shown. This right here shows social workers, but they'll have other industries, like I know nursing has one, and other business formats will have one, and that just shows employees for different fields on their code of ethics, not for the company, but for the field as a whole. And the code of ethics makes sure it covers all people. A lot of anti-discrimination, whether it's race, sexual orientation, anything along those lines. So basically everyone's covered, not everyone, but the protected class is covered.